And welcome back to Coast George Noory with you with our Art Bell special tribute show. One of Art Bell's dearest friends, noted author, of course, host of UnknownCountry.com, Whitley Strieber with us now. Whitley, first of all, thank you for joining us Friday during that very tragic night. It was a big effort for you, and I really appreciate it.
And thank you for having me back, George, because I wanted to come back because today I attended Art's funeral and in Pahrump. And it was very small, just basically local people. And me and Dannion, I believe, were the only Coast people who were there. Bob Crane was there.
Good.
And I wanted to report on it. It was a very lovely, simple ceremony. And some people spoke. Dannion spoke beautifully. Aaron Bell, White's wife, spoke. And it was the most lovely, courageous thing I have heard in a very long time. She, they met right after Mona died, after his wife Mona died. And I can remember Art called me up and said, "I've met a woman." And I said, "Really? That's incredible," because, it was really only a few weeks later.
But he was very depressed, wasn't he?
Oh, God.
Very depressed.
We jumped in our car and drove up to Pahrump because he was telling us on the way home in the RV after Mona died, he's driving up home and he said, "Whitley, I'm going to shoot myself."
Oh.
And I told Ann, and she said, "Get in the car. We're going up there right now." And we went up, and, his neighbors and friends up there all gathered round, of course, and everyone got him through. But then Art had an absolutely uncanny insight into people. Mm-hmm. It was really almost psychic.
Yeah,
maybe it was.
He was intuitive about people.
Very, very intuitive. So he calls up and he says, "I've met this woman," and he's telling me about her. And Ann's sitting here beside me, and I'm sort of hemming and hawing because he's telling me he's iffy about her age. He won't say the truth, which is she's 20 and he's like 65. And so Ann grabs the phone from me and she says, "He's just hemming and hawing. Art, I know what you're talking about. Go for it."
That was Ann. That was Ann.
All the way. And today, this wonderful, beautiful, articulate woman, now speaking English perfectly, with 2 lovely children, stood up there in an act of incredible courage after nearly collapsing.
Oh, my God, yeah.
At the viewing in grief, and spoke of her husband in the most noble way I think I have ever heard a wife speak in a moment like that at the internment. And it was really inspiring. Dannion spoke, and, we all remember the wonderful shows that he and Art did together.
It must have been surreal for all of you, Whitley.
It was. It was unbelievable.
Almost like you were waiting for Art's ghost to come up and sit down with all of you.
Well, he may have. Who knows? But it was the flags in Pahrump were at half staff. I noticed. I think they were there that way for Art. No one told me one way or another. In any case, it was. I just wanted to say it was a few close friends and neighbors. It was very private, and I just want the fans and the Coast family to know that it happened. It was beautiful, and I was thinking about you at the funeral and thinking about how, there were various struggles. And as Art's COPD set in, he would never say that, but he was having trouble breathing when he was speaking on the air, and he was becoming very uneasy about it. Mm-hmm. And began to retire and then not retire and retire and not retire, et cetera. We all went through that with him. And there were lots of hiccups, and then you came on, and as Alan Corbett was saying, you were always there when you were needed. And you have taken this terribly important and valuable concept forward. And I thought at thank you very much, George, for doing that. As I was sitting there,
Thank you.
I want to bring it to a close here with just the last few lines I said when I spoke, because they express some of the beauty and depth of not only his soul but all of our souls, I hope. Here he was lying before us, a man who freed millions of minds and made the world better in an absolutely unique and original way. And, Tennyson said, man comes and lies and tills the soil and lies beneath. But there's more. And there's another great thinker, Thomas Vaughan, who said this. He said, the liberated soul ascends, looking toward the west wind and hearing secret harmonies.
I love it.
And I felt that at that moment. Those harmonies, we can't hear them. They don't belong to us. But we can send our prayers and wishes with art and with all whom we love who have stepped beyond as they return, ascending into that land of light.
Thank you. You're one of a kind, my friend.
One of a kind.
Whitley Strieber. Thank you. I remember the first time I heard this guest with Art, I was mesmerized, absolutely riveted. Major Ed Dames, our remote viewer. Ed, thank you for joining us tonight. I do appreciate it.
Hey, anyway, thanks for dedicating the show to our late friend, and
oh my God,
thanks for having me on.
Oh my God, do you remember the very first show you did with Art?
Yep.
When was that? It had to have been in the 90s, I would guess.
No,
right?
it was 96. I had a call from a friend in Hollywood, a world-class rock photographer, Robert Knight, who later introduced me. I introduced him to Ingo Swann, and he and his wife, Marianne, they hit it off famously. They became Ingo's biographers. Anyway, he says to me, you need to do this show, Ed. And forgive me, I had a couple of bruises under my belt. I'm not a real Superman, human. And I said, you got to be kidding, Robert. AM radio? Where have you been, Robert? Like the song said, video killed the radio star. And he said, Ed, I'm telling you, man, this show is extremely popular. Many people listen to it. So I did it. And then 2 hours later, I put the phone down, and I said to myself and the woman I was living with at the time, I like that guy. And that was the beginning. So anyway, over the years, the guy on the other end of the phone line became not just a radio show host, as well as a radio legend, as we now know.
Absolutely.
But as you two have become, George, a friend, as well as Tom, Lisa, Lex, and Stephanie.
It's become family. And he started the family. This was his family.
Yeah, he did. Anyway, there's a couple of humorous. I only have a few minutes there.
Sure.
That's all I want to say. A couple of humorous private conversations between Art and I that I'd like to share with the public. I'll never share the intimate ones. But on the subject of cats, I tried to tell Art that he was being deceived, that cats only love you. And he loved them. He
loved them. He was obsessed with them.
They were like Egyptian gods, that kind of thing. He didn't just adore them. It was like that. But I tried to tell him that he was being deceived. That cats only love you if you feed them, where a dog's love is unconditional. And I told him, you can prove this. If a man takes his wife and his dog and locks them into a closet for 2 hours, he comes back, unlocks the door, guess which one is happy to see him? So there was silence on the other end of the phone. And the other one was this incident where I was describing our sister science, remote viewing, sister science, psychokinesis, PK, telekinesis. And I used the audience, Art Bell's listening audience, to slow down one of Art's studio clocks.
Ooh.
And
it worked, I bet.
Yeah, it worked. And he called me during the break. He said, Ed, please don't ever do that again. I have all these sensitive electronics and things like that.
He needed those times.
Yeah. And I said, okay, I won't do it again. But if we ever do it again, I'll tell you what, we'll target Larry King's pacemaker.
Oh.
And Art, no, don't do it. Okay. Anyway, I could never put the joke in on the air because that 15-second delay. Hey, Art, Did you hear the one about the drunk aardvark who stumbled into the massage parlor west of the Rocky style? So anyway,
Ed, my friend,
I share the same.
Let us keep in touch. I look forward to you being back, but most importantly, thank you for your years of service with Art.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Our next guest is a favorite of mine, and of course was a favorite of Art Bell's. He's going to tell you a story when he was in the hospital, what Art did. Let's bring on Dannion Brinkley. Dannion, welcome, my friend. I look forward to seeing you in June in Las Vegas at our event, but
I can't wait.
My God, you were at the funeral today, Whitley was telling me.
Yeah, Whitley's, you know what you appreciate about Whitley, George, is what a great writer he is.
Oh, my gosh. Yes.
I mean, he gave a speech that was as real and as eloquent and as magnificent as you would want it to. Me, I loved Art, and Art was funny, but I understood Art's personality. You know, I knew his pixie ways and how everybody had to watch somewhere in time, and we all had to go to Michigan to this place where somewhere in time, and we all had to listen to him quote Jane Seymour. You know, just the funny things about Art. And I was standing there today, and Whitley was good, but I have to be funny because about 3 weeks ago when I talked to him, the kind of pain that he was in wasn't worth it.
You could tell that he was really hurting, couldn't you?
Oh, come on, George. And this had to been going on. I mean, we talk every couple of months, and it's just the talk through the same things. Like he's trying to get Heather, the little radio show that he started. Mm-hmm. He was trying to talk her into going into Area 51 and broadcasting, and he was telling her he'd come bail her out. And this was always Art up to something.
Yeah.
You know? And then one of the best times, George, was I went to see him, and he had just gotten his, I think it's 1996 Trans Am, the big war horse.
He loved that, didn't he?
Oh, come on. He says, Dano, let's go get the mail. And he lives on a street that the post office is at the end of the street, but it's about 4 miles, maybe 5 miles to the post office. But we went to the post office at 142 miles an hour.
Oh, my gosh.
We came back around 1:30.
You're the guy that almost died twice. This could have been the third for you.
It would have been okay because it was Art having that moment of where his victory was that he had wanted this car all the way through the 60s, you know, the when it came out, you know, from the...
Sure. Dannion, I want you to tell people when you were in the hospital fighting for your life when Art came to visit you.
Well, this is the real part about Art. I mean, I had... they gave me a 10% chance of survival. I had brain surgery. I had between 5 and 7 subdural hematomas. And it wasn't like I was going to make it. So what Art and Ramona did was they got in an airplane and they flew to South Carolina. And Art broadcast for 5 days as I was going through those final days of surgery and getting ready for surgery and going into surgery. And he broadcast and he'd spend the days in the room. And this is there was 2 things, George, that got Art. One was when it was a drought and it hadn't rained, and he turned to everybody to get them to make it rain and to focus on the audience to make it rain, and it rained the next day.
It didn't stop raining. It scared the living daylights out of him, didn't it?
Not only that, listen, George, he thought it was weather modification and someone had listened to him. How in the world could that power have been? And the other time when he came, he asked everybody on Coast to Coast to say a prayer for me because it got scary in those days when they were going to have to do open heart surgery and brain surgery. And I was in so much pain, I couldn't stand it. I mean, anything had to be better than what was going on. And so Art put that prayer out, and George, the room became silvery, and I didn't have a headache. And for about 3 hours, for the first time in 10 days, I got a chance to put my life in order instead of dealing with pain. So when I think about where Art is, the things that the magic and the power of what Coast to Coast is, and the kind of production system that you have behind you, and then you carrying that placard. there is no way that Art wouldn't be proud. And when I talked to Erin, she wanted to say thank you to you and Tommy. Thank you for caring about Art and putting this information and getting people the chance who didn't know him to know him.
How is she? Is she going to stay in the United States, or is she going to go back to the Philippines? What might she do?
I think that will be a hard decision. She has so many really good friends and Art's friends, and she has family. But you know, you don't ever really know.
And the little girl was born here. She's and
she's
the son, an American.
And Alex.
Yeah,
and Alex too.
Yeah,
and he has a 1-year-old. Think about it, a little over 1 year old.
He's just a toddler, a little one.
Alex. And so I don't know, but today you could see the many moods of a person who is going through loss. I mean, I've watched it, been a hospice volunteer for 40 years. I can watch the patterns. And now she's in grief, and she hasn't gotten to grief. She's in bereavement and loss.
Dannion, I'm going to ask you this on a newsworthy question, and that is, we have not heard the exact cause of death yet. Have they even talked about that?
Well, it's going to end up being complications from COPD or emphysema, but it's going to be, it'll be heart failure from, and Art smoked for 40 years. He was a 4-pack a dayer.
Oh my! How much?
He was a 4-pack a dayer.
4 packs a day?
Right.
My God!
And he did that for 40 years. And then one day when he married Erin, that was it. They were going to have a baby. That was it.
He stopped.
10 years.
He was able to stop cold turkey?
That day. Stop.
Wow, that's Art.
He snuck around and smoked a couple, but he stopped. and he never smoked again. But when you put cardiopulmonary position and then you put every breath is painful, you know how emphysema works. And
is she going to be okay, in your opinion?
Yeah. She has the support of her family, and they were there. She has the support of her family, and she's stable and well-rounded. I mean, and she and Art loved each other. It was funny. I mean, I used to laugh at it, but it was funny how that blend and the way Art was being the best parent that he could be and dealing with the pain, George, that he was dealing with. I know he will stay close. I mean, it was very easy to feel his presence when you looked at those people there at the graveside. And then they all laughed for a moment and thought about his practical joking. And most people don't realize he was like a pool shark. I mean, Art could shoot pool as well as anybody I have seen.
Really? I didn't know that.
Think about this. I mean, he was a pool hustler. And he hustled everybody who came in the house.
He played like he didn't know how to play.
Right.
They'd put their $10 down and he'd win.
Well, that's exactly how he did me. I mean, I was a pretty good pool shooter, but this guy was a serious pool shooter. So tonight is a celebration, George. Another one of us gets to go home. And every answer that we've sought since the 90s, since like 94 when Coast to Coast started, every answer that Art and you and the team has searched out, Art now knows all those answers.
He does.
And when you think tonight, everybody, and you think about Art, and I was listening to the guy who had called in, I think Mike, you could hear his heart in how so many people of the night love Coast to Coast and how it's affected all of us in a way that opens up our minds to possibilities. You know, and to have that as a moniker and to have you guys doing this tribute, there is no greater accolade that Art could ever reach for other than where he is. And he is not in pain, George. And
I hope he's watching and listening and likes this show.
He wouldn't miss it. Think about it.
We need him to call in.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Because you remember he used to do that all the time.
Oh yes. I wouldn't put it by him to call in on this show.
I would not. I would not put it by somebody's phone. This is Art. This is Art free.
We've got caller ID, and if Gina sees a bunch of zeros come in on a call, grab it, Gina.
Grab it. Because or if he texts, you don't ever know. I know that Art is celebrating it. Because all that stuff, and I don't think that he's done the tunnel or the cross the meadow or the veil. I think he stays present because after hearing everything that we've talked about and that Coast has talked about and covered, and I've near death everybody to death just about. Art knew what to expect because we talked about it 100 times, and he knew what to expect. And I know absolutely that the stages that he would go through, that he has made it to where he understands he is in control of his spiritual identity.
He sure is.
That way, he's not going to leave that. He's not going to leave Erin until she's settled and moved into a place where when the air goes out of the balloon.
He did it his way, Dannion.
Yeah, and I'll keep checking on her, and I'll keep.
Okay, my friend. And I'll see you June 9th at our event in Vegas. I really look forward to seeing you. I need a hug from you.
Absolutely. And everybody, if you're anywhere near one of these shows, wherever these shows are, this is entertainment and information at its absolute best. I mean, I enjoy participating in it and watching the ins and outs and the entertainment value that you bring, George, and the way that they set it up. It's absolutely fabulous. I'm sure it could be a lounge act in Las Vegas. I'm sure of it.
We'll move up there.
It puts a little more pressure on you, George, but the kind of audience that would come and the kind of quality of that show, it's uplifting, it's invigorating, it's inspirational.
Well, we're dedicating that show, Dannion, to Art, by the way.
And I think that's even greater.
We're doing that to our friend. Okay. Thank you, Dannion.
All right, I love you guys. I appreciate it. And everybody, celebrate that Art is free, that he's not in that kind of pain, and he's living in our hearts. And thanks, George.
Thank you. Dannion Brinkley.